All right, let's stick with the budget now. And Labor feels like they've got the coalition where they want them now, voting against those tax cuts. A little earlier, I asked Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor for his response to Labor's gloating.
Well, it's absolute nonsense because this is a budget for the next 5 weeks, not for the next 5 years, Chris. And of course, it's a budget for an election, not a budget for Australia's prosperity. We've got an economy that is broken for middle Australia. Hardworking Australians can't get ahead. Their standard of living has collapsed under Labor, and there's absolutely nothing in this budget that's going to get them back on track. To offer them 70 cents a day out more than a year from now is truly an insult. It's a cruel hoax. It doesn't address any of the underlying issues that we're facing. It doesn't bring down the cost of energy, the failed promise they made on that, $275. It doesn't make the cost of housing any more affordable for Australians. It doesn't beat inflation. It doesn't boost growth. It doesn't fix our underlying housing supply. It doesn't get rid of waste. It doesn't cut red tape. All of the things we know we need to do. And the answer, of course, for Australians to see prosperity again, to restore hope, is to make sure that we're managing the economy properly, and that's not happening under Labor.
Look, I have to agree with what you've said. I said last night, I think this tax cut is just a gimmick, a distraction, an attempt to shift the debate away from the real story of this budget, and that is the deficits as far as the eye can see and the debt now hitting $1 trillion. Jim Chalmers is Australia's first ever $1 trillion treasurer with $1 trillion debt. So the big question is, what can you do? What would your plan be to attack those deficits and that enormous debt?
Well, you're absolutely right, Chris. This is now a huge spending, huge taxing, big Australia, big deficit government, $170 billion of deficits over 5 years. That's about $6,000 for every Australian they're sticking on the credit card. And of course, you know, if you want to give a handout, and this is not real tax reform, let's not kid ourselves, it's a handout. If you want to give a handout, it's got to be paid for, and it's paid for by the exact same people. Now, we can do better. And we know that the fiscal rules that were put in place by Peter Costello back in the 1990s are the way to deal with this. You've got to get them back. Jim Chalmers threw those out when he came into this role because it didn't fit his approach. He's a PhD of spin, not economics, and so he's thrown out the rule book and he's focused on the spin. He hasn't focused on the substance, and Australians are paying a high price for that. We've already opposed over $100 billion of bad Labor spending. That has been our discipline, has meant we've done that from opposition. No opposition has done anything like this since Malcolm Fraser in 1975, and we're not proposing to block supply. But we have said no to building power lines to nowhere, to manufacturing programs that aren't delivering manufacturing. The first big investment they made was in a quantum company based out of the US. Housing programs that haven't delivered a house, not a house, Chris.
Let me cut you off there. I mean, that's important. That is important, and you've got a track record on that. Containing spending is crucial if you're going to get debt down. But the other way, unless you sell off assets, as Labor and the coalition have done in the past, there aren't that many assets to sell off anymore. The other way then to deal with debt is obviously to grow the economy. You've got to control your spending and grow the economy so that debt shrinks. And one of the ways to help grow the economy is taxation reform. Are you just going to dismiss Labor's miserly sort of gimmicky tax cuts and do nothing, or are you going to give us some taxation reform, perhaps even indexation of rates to get rid of bracket creep?
Well, we've already announced important tax changes, and right at the heart of that is accelerated depreciation. Some like to poo-poo this because that doesn't matter to them, but let me tell you, for a small business, if you allow them to write off their investment, they invest more. And if they invest more, they create jobs, they create prosperity, they drive productivity, they drive up real wages. This is a really crucial way, we know, to strengthen the economy, to drive growth. And as you rightly say, you need the economy growing faster than spending. That's how you improve the budget situation. That's how you also provide over time tax reform. Chris, that is the key. And that's why that basic fiscal rule is so important, and one that we will reinstate as soon as we get back into government.
So Australia needs taxation reform?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen, look, under this government, the average Australian is paying $3,500 in more personal income tax than when Labor came to power. And that's after their so-called tax cuts. There haven't been tax cuts under this government, and this, what they've provided here, will make absolutely no difference, Chris. We're still paying a hell of a lot more tax than we were 2.5 years ago. Now, we've got to beat inflation permanently. Inflation has a habit of coming back. It has a bad habit of coming back. This government, of course, is spending like drunken sailors, and the risk is it will come back under this government. But it does have so we've got to beat it permanently.
Just briefly,
we've got to make sure.
Just briefly, sorry, Angus Taylor, we're nearly out of time. So it sounds like we will get something on taxation reform tomorrow night. We'll wait and see what that is. Can you also tell us briefly whether or not the coalition will cut the migration rate?
Well, you will see a lower migration rate under us than under Labor, and will be substantially lower. I won't give you those numbers. We've just got new numbers from the government. 1.8 million in 5 years, Chris. Just over 1 million in just 2 years. This is breaking all records.
Angus Taylor, thanks for joining us. We await all the details tomorrow night.